Get Macy's lowest prices of the season on furniture, mattresses, and rugs specials. Kick back on the Lily fabric sofa for $579. Sit down to the new Aberdeen 5-piece dining set, now $1,049. And stretch out on the Canyon Queen bed, just $339. Plus, get 50 to 60% off select Simmons and Sealy mattresses. Going on now at Macy's. Savings off sale and clearance prices. Exclusions apply.
Farmers Policy Perks are that little extra something you can get when you're a Farmers customer. So to tell you about them, we're adding a little extra something to this ad, smooth saxophone riffs. When you have a Farmers home policy with guaranteed replacement cost, if your home gets destroyed, we'll pay to rebuild it regardless of your limits. Dig it. It's a whole lot of something. Get a quote at farmers.com.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Optional coverage not available in every state. Only available with select farmers-branded policies. Subject to terms and conditions. Underwritten by Farmers Truck or Fire Insurance Exchanges or affiliate.
This 2021 season is full of high rollers with deep pockets who will let it ride. Football 21, a game of blackjack.
Here's the kick. It's got the distance, and it is good!
Will the future Hall of Famers still be aces?
Rodgers in the shotgun, takes the snap, lofts it over the right side. Devontae over the shoulder, catch, got it!
Can fresh-faced upstarts beat the house?
They're in victory formation, and Baker Mayfield takes a knee. The Browns are going to the playoffs.
Which of the college football contenders will be dealt a stiff hand?
It'll start with a throw. Rattler deep drop. Takes a shot for Mims behind the defense. Got him. Touchdown. Pay dirt. Marvelous.
For the 21 season, we're doubling down.
This is starting to become very, very real.
It's Sunday Morning Football with your host, D.A., only on CBS Sports Radio.
And we come to you live from the Rocket Mortgage Studios. Need to know what it takes for a home to fit your budget and your family? Rocket can. We thank you for being with us. Damon Amendolara with you. Coming up this hour here on the show, in 40 minutes, Amal Shah is going to join us, our Vegas virtuoso. We'll ask him about today's NFL action, what the lines look like. Also, coming up later on in this hour, in 20 minutes, we hear from Solomon Wilcots, longtime NFL analyst, on the emotional Dan Campbell and whether the Lions can finally get their first win of the season. Also, Odell Beckham is out in Cleveland, and one of the heroes of the Tennessee Titans, run to their only Super Bowl back in 1999, weighs in on the removal of Derrick Henry from the equation and the addition of Adrian Peterson. It's all coming up this morning right here on Sunday Morning Football. You can hear us across hundreds of affiliates nationwide and north of the border. Also, check us out on SiriusXM. We've moved channels there. We were on 206. Now we're on 158. So make that change and make that note accordingly. CBS Sports Radio is on SiriusXM channel 158. And if you're on your phone, you're out doing stuff today, running around getting ready for your day of football, well, you could always listen to us on your phone by using the CBS Sports app. That's free. That's got sports scores and analysis and plenty of information for today's NFL action. And then you can also listen to CBS Sports Radio, or you can listen to us on the Odyssey app. That's pretty cool, too, because you can pause, rewind, and fast forward live radio. That is the Odyssey app. Both of those apps are free on your phone. Well, yesterday, Michigan State had its first chance to validate its stamp at number 3 in the college football playoff rankings. It was number 1, Georgia, number 2, Alabama, and then number 3, Michigan State. But Purdue has had a tendency to knock off top 5 opponents in the past, and yesterday they did it again. Let's begin by coming in hot.
Buddha 1, you've got a pair of bogeys, 12 o'clock.
30-plus years of service. Only man to shoot down 3 enemy planes in the last 40 years.
Yeah, attention, air control. Someone tell DA he's coming in hot.
Over. The end is inevitable, Maverick. You're kind of headed for extinction.
Maybe so, sir, but not today.
Michigan State was coming off that phenomenal win over Michigan. State was undefeated at 8-0. State this season had only 4 more games to navigate through. At Purdue, unranked Boilermakers, home to Maryland, then the big tilt at Ohio State on the 20th, and then home to Penn State, currently unranked Nittany Lions. So stubbing your toe before you got to the Buckeyes was not predicted, but it did happen, and Michigan State's defense once again was torn apart. The Spartans' offense is very good, but the defense has had a lot of problems all season long, especially if they can't get to the quarterback. And look out, Purdue. The Boilermakers turned into the Spoilermakers yesterday.
Anther comes in motion. They hand it to him on a reverse. Now a double reverse. A pitch back to O'Connell. They're going to throw a screen pass. This is Anthrop. He's at the 35. He's at the 30. He's at the 25. Still on his feet to the middle of the field. He's at the 20. He's at the 15. He's at the 10. Still on his feet to the near sideline. 5. Touchdown! Boilermakers! A 39-yard flea flicker from O'Connell to Anthrop. And Purdue stretches the lead 20-7.
We didn't make enough plays. We didn't execute well enough to win the game. They outplayed us. They made more plays than we made, so we got to give them credit. They played a heck of a ball game, okay? And it's a 24-hour rule for us: win, lose, or draw. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to get on the tape. We have to get the corrections. Okay, we get the corrections, get things fixed. Then we have to have a great week of preparation, and we get ready for Maryland coming into the woodshed on Saturday. All of our goals are ahead of us. All of our goals are still ahead of us. We're going to block out all of the noise. Okay, we're going to circle the wagons. Okay, the most important voices are going to be the voices inside of our building.
So that was Michigan State head coach Mel Tucker. The play-by-play call was Purdue Football Radio with voice of Purdue Tim Newton on the call. That play was crazy, and you got to give the coaching staff at Purdue credit for designing that, practicing that, and then pulling that trick out of the bag. They ran a reverse, pitched it back to the quarterback. The QB then throws a screen pass. There's like 4 offensive linemen waiting to block, and then he takes it into the end zone for the touchdown. It was pretty insane. But it was that type of day for Purdue. Things went right for Purdue. Things went wrong for Michigan State. And look, the Spartans' defense has been a hole for much of this season, and Purdue took advantage of it yesterday. What I would say is that when Mel Tucker says our goals are still ahead of us, we can accomplish what we want to accomplish, he's not wrong. Because even though Ohio State's only loss this season is out of conference against Oregon, Michigan State still controls its own destination. That's because if Michigan State beats Ohio State and beats Maryland and Penn State the rest of the way, they win their side of the Big Ten. They go to the Big Ten championship game. They've got the head-to-head tiebreaker over Michigan. And if they beat Ohio State head-to-head, they would finish as a one-loss team in the Big Ten, go to the Big Ten title game. If you win that, you're absolutely going to the college football playoff as a one-loss Big Ten champ. The problem is that Ohio State game looms really large, and it's going to be a huge test, and it's on the road to the horseshoe. So if the Spartans got by Purdue yesterday and needed what they needed to get by Michigan, what happens against Ohio State? That's still to come. But what Michigan State can accomplish is still ahead of them. If they lose to Ohio State, it's a problem. They would then need Michigan to beat Ohio State in the final regular season weekend, which would hand Ohio State 2 losses and then cause that tie-breaking chaos in the Big Ten. We'll wait and see on that one, but Michigan State yesterday got served a slice of humble pie. They got positioned at number 3 in the country by the playoff committee and then immediately took an L 40-29 against unranked Purdue. In the NFL, the Tennessee Titans currently hold the 1 seed of the AFC playoffs. But what does that mean once Derrick Henry goes down for the season? Henry's foot injury is a devastating blow for the Titans. We know how dominant Henry is. We know how important he is to the offense. What does this Titans offense look like when you take out Derrick Henry and you put in 36-year-old Adrian Peterson?
Tannehill gives Henry on the right side. There he goes. 25-30, 35-40, that's 50, it. 40, that's 30, it. 20, 10, 5, end zone. Ladies and gentlemen, 76 yards. Derrick Henry, touchdown, Titans. That's getting something going.
We're going to have to be creative, and we're going to have to figure out answers and way to
move the football and continue to run our offense. And a lot of that is probably still up in the air, about what we're going to do and, game plan and who will be in there and then the bodies that we have available and the ones that we may, even eventually sign, to come in here.
So that was Mike Keith on Titans Radio with your play-by-play call, the big 76-yard touchdown run against the Bills for Derrick Henry, one of the highlights of the season for the Titans. That's head coach Mike Vrabel, knowing that this offense is going to be different without Derrick Henry. I think that the Titans can get exposed here because Ryan Tannehill's been effective, certainly, and he's got two really good wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. But everything was predicated first on trying to stop Derrick Henry for opposing defenses. And once you take away that threat and know that the pressure comes first on Tannehill's passing game, what does that look like? Tannehill was great with play action. Tannehill's been great as a secondary offensive weapon for the offense. But we all know, Derrick Henry was what you had to stop to beat the Titans, and that was much easier said than done. So it's a devastating blow. It's also tough to watch Henry go down because if you are a fan of the NFL for generations, decades, many years, Derrick Henry is a throwback. Derrick Henry is Earl Campbell or Eric Dickerson or Emmitt Smith or Barry Sanders or Jim Brown or Walter Payton, the greats of all time that you hand the football off to 25, 28, 30 times a game and say, go win us the football game. That does not happen anymore. He is a dinosaur. That's just not what the NFL is anymore. And so bringing in Adrian Peterson, while Peterson was one of those guys in his prime, all day AP, here you go, 30 times a game, run the rock and win us the football game. He's not that guy anymore. And so starting tonight, it's a really stiff test on Sunday Night Football, the Titans and Rams in Los Angeles, against a Rams defense that has Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, Jalen Ramsey, and just added Von Miller. Can the Titans start the era post-Derrick Henry against the Rams on the road and find a win? And then next week, they've got a home game against the Saints, another really good defense. 2 weeks after that, it's in New England against the Patriots. And at the end of the season, they've got the Steelers defense, the Niners defense before they wrap up. These are tough matchups for a Titans offense that is now without its best player. So they may get exposed tonight. And Tannehill, the rest of the season, might get exposed as well. He has to take his game to the next level. The passing game needs to be far more creative. They do go downfield effectively. Again, those wide receivers are really good targets. But what do you look like when you are now the first option and not the second option? The best news for the Titans is simply that Adrian Peterson hasn't played football yet this year. And so if he's ever going to be fresh and not worn down, it would be now. Finally, the Cleveland Browns are now post-Odell Beckham. They work out a buyout / a release, and Odell is going to hit waivers this week. And so Baker Mayfield, if he did have problems behind the scenes, making sure that Odell was satisfied, he doesn't have that problem anymore. And remember, last year when Odell went down with a season-ending ACL injury, that's when Baker took off. It is time now, Baker Mayfield, to play your best football.
Mayfield on first down, and he's going to bootleg it out. Near side looking. He's going to go long and deep. Beckham's out there. He's got it! In the end zone. Touchdown! OBJ!
Odell will not be out there. He's been excused. Andrew Berry and his representatives are continuing to talk. So for today, Odell will not be out there.
Kevin, when you say Andrew and Odell's representatives are continuing to talk, I guess what does that mean?
Yeah, I think they're discussing a lot of things. And the truth is, guys, I don't have a ton of details for you. I'm happy to answer as much as I can, but I think some things we'll know more as we go.
Hurt? No. Surprised? Yes. I've had conversations with his dad before, man-to-man, face-to-face, and I was pretty surprised by the video and, the intentions and the feelings behind it. I'd be lying if I said otherwise, but hurt? No. I'm good. I'll be all right.
This is just such a bizarre twist because, of course, Odell. That is Baker Mayfield after the video is posted by Odell's dad trashing Baker Mayfield. That was Kevin Stefanski earlier in the week before they found that resolution and ended up releasing Odell Beckham. And that was Jim Donovan on Browns radio with your play-by-play call. Couple of things here. Number one, it's never Odell's fault. It's Eli's fault. It's Ben McAdoo's offense. It's Pat Shurmur's offense. It's Freddie Kitchens' offense. It's Kevin Stefanski's offense. It's Baker Mayfield. It's never Odell Beckham. That's the first thing you got to remember. From his view, from his lens, it's always somebody else, much like the guy that gets remarried 5 times. It was always his ex-wife who was the crazy one. All 5 of them. Number 2, when Baker says what he says there, look, do I think that behind the scenes there was probably some discomfort in trying to get Odell the ball because Odell was a storyline when he did or did not get the football? Yes. And Baker may not have handled that well. Baker, obviously, last season when Odell went out, was far more comfortable in the role of distributing the football. So maybe that happens again. It needs to happen again because the Browns need the best Baker Mayfield. They haven't gotten that many times this year. So there's no excuse now for Baker suddenly to go, I don't have enough targets, because last year he was at his best when he lost Odell Beckham. And he has been really struggling. If he's a franchise guy, this is where he takes over the reins and shines. But also when Baker says, I've spoken to his dad face-to-face, that is so problematic to me. Can you imagine being a professional athlete and having your dad talk to your teammate to get some type of point across? A wide receiver's dad talking to the quarterback? Like, that in and of itself is such a dynamic that is so dysfunctional. Dad should never be talking to the quarterback. Dad should never be getting in the way on the field of what needs to be done. And when he posts that video of all of the throws that Baker Mayfield either doesn't make to Odell or misses on Odell, and Odell never speaks out against it or distances himself from it, it tells you all you need to know about the dysfunction in the background of Odell Beckham. Dad's posting this for me. Dad's defending this for me. Dad's talking to my quarterback for me. I mean, does that not shine some light on why Odell is the way Odell is? Helicopter parents. And he's a professional in the NFL. He's 28 years old. Do you still need helicopter parents? We'll talk more about this coming up here after the break, because a Super Bowl champion NFL Network analyst had a very interesting comparison to what Odell is and why he had no trade value at the deadline on Tuesday. That's coming up as part of the Insiders. We'll talk about an emotional Lions locker room that just can't seem to get over the hump here, Odell in Cleveland and what happens next for him, and whether Adrian Peterson can step into the void left by Derrick Henry's injury. That's coming up here next. DA, Sunday Morning Football, CBS Sports Radio.
CBS Television Sports presents the National Football League.
You're locked in to Sunday Morning Football on CBS Sports Radio with your host, D.A. We ask those who are in the game for their thoughts on the game.
Congratulations, man. That's all.
It's time for the Insiders.
I'll knock you out.
And today, Week 9 of the NFL on CBS features an AFC North matchup in Ohio where Joe Burrow and the Bengals battle the Browns. Plus, there's key interconference clashes, Raiders and Giants, or the Chargers heading to Philly. Get set for all of the action on the NFL today, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. That's all coming up today. The NFL is on CBS. So we begin with our Insider segment with Solomon Wilcott. Now, Solomon played in the NFL for a number of years. He also has covered the NFL for many, many years. He formerly was of CBS Sports, and he is watching this Lions team with an emotional Dan Campbell try to find a way to finally win a football game but be unable to do so. And we've now heard and seen Dan Campbell get pretty emotional so far into the season. In fact, even times crying because he's been unable to find a way to win a football game. They are 0-8 right now, the last winless team in the NFL. They will have a bye week today and then travel to Pittsburgh a week from today to take on the Steelers. Here is Solomon Wilcott on whether that really emotional way that Dan Campbell has of coaching might at some point start falling on deaf ears because there's only so far and so long you can go by being that intense but not getting results.
It does wear thin. It is as heartfelt as it is, as original. I think it's very organic for Coach Campbell. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you've got to begin to have execution on the football field. You got to be able to put teams away, critical moments in games. They've had it where they've lost a lot of these close games, but now they're starting to get blown out by teams like the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, let's face it, you would think that the Lions and the Eagles are more closely aligned in terms of their ability, two first-year coaches at the beginning of their program, but yet the Eagles hang 44 on them. It's one of their biggest road wins going back to, 1981. It was one of those disappointing games. Emotion can only take you so far.
I think Solomon is right. I think that Dan Campbell's emotional, heart-on-his-sleeve attitude is absolutely authentic. It's not an act. It's who he is. But I said this earlier in the season, and I'll echo it again. It's such a long season. There are so many games and games within the games and press conferences and injuries and decisions that to get too emotional about any of them, to me, is a mistake. And when it was October and he is crying after a missed opportunity, I'm like, if you're going to be the solution to the Lions, who have not won a championship since 1957, then you've got to be there for 3 or 4 years, minimum, to be part of the solution. You've got to be there for stability, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Well, breaking down and crying in week 5 of your first year, you're not set up to do this long term because the guys can't follow such an emotional lead week in, week out without not burning out. You just can't run that hot. Now, I'm not saying you don't have the desire or the passion to win. You want that. You desperately want the urgency, the desire, the passion to be there. But it can't bubble over or transform into tears or brokenheartedness in October of year number 1. And since that's happened, it's almost felt like the Lions have gotten farther and farther away from winning. They came really close in that Vikings game. They lost 19-17. They had lost 19-17 to the Ravens as well. Then against the Bengals, they lost by 23 points. They lost by 10 points to the Rams. And then they got absolutely dismantled by a mediocre to below mediocre Eagles team, 44-6 last week. The Lions need this break. They need some time away. But it doesn't get much easier at Steelers, at Browns coming up. We'll see if by the end of the season Campbell can find a way to get a win. But you just got to remember that as much as you want to push and drive for a team that's going to lose a lot of football games, you can't break down. Here is Sean O'Hara, who won a Super Bowl with the New York Giants on the offensive line. He's a member of the NFL Network now. And I asked him, well, if they're going to come to some type of breakup this week, and ultimately it came to a release, why didn't the Browns just trade Odell on Tuesday? Here's O'Hara.
My guess is they tried to trade him, and it was just, you know what, there's no takers. You know, like everybody will say, hey, why did you trade him? Why did you trade him? Well, you know what, like, guess what? It's like, you know, having a garage sale, and it's like, I tried to sell this couch. Nobody wanted it. Like, okay, so now I have to carry it down to the end of the street and just give it away and just, you know, get it out. I'm done with it. So just because something that once was a comfortable couch doesn't necessarily mean other people want to sit on it. So there's a business side of the game, which is always ugly, but you can't complain about it when you're, you know, when your direct deposit has a comma or two in it. You know, like that's part of the business. So you can't have one without the other. You know, with regard to Odell and, you know, his dad and Baker, haven't we seen this movie before, DA? When he left the Giants, though, and he was trashing Eli, you know, it was like I thought when he got there and he was like, wow, Baker's got a great arm. All of a sudden, the reports were coming out, wow, Odell was really impressed with Baker's arm strength. Was that a jab at Eli? Was that a jab at his quarterback? So, you know, this whole, like, drama stuff from OBJ, we've seen this movie before. We've heard it before. This is a rerun, and I'm not going to waste any more time on it.
Sean O'Hara, strong words about Odell Beckham. Just because you're selling a couch doesn't mean anybody wants to sit on it. Odell, I think in some ways, a victim of his own success. That one-handed grab against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football will forever be one of the great catches in NFL history. And coming out of the blocks, this was a guy that caught 1,300 yards, 1,400 yards, 1,300 yards first 3 seasons for the Giants. 12 touchdowns, 13 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns. I mean, he was a Pro Bowler all 3 of those years. But since 2017, he hasn't made a Pro Bowl. Since 2017, he has not been the game breaker he once was. Since 2017, he's been injury prone and seemingly lashing out at everybody around him, coaches, quarterbacks, etc. He's going to be on waivers, and so now we'll have the waiver order. It's not whoever he just wants to sign with. We're going to see who claims him, if anybody claims him. But this is really interesting. You know, will a contender grab Odell because they see an asset that they can get cheaply, a depressed asset? Or will contenders stay away because they feel like, you know what, it might just be a distraction, might just be a negative? You've got his dad posting videos about how bad the quarterback is. And I would also say in that video cut up that his dad posted, there's a bunch of plays in there where Baker actually throws the football to Odell. It might not be on time, but he does end up deciding to throw it to Odell. So this idea that Baker didn't want to let him shine is kind of ridiculous. He did try to throw the football. This is not to absolve responsibility of Baker Mayfield. Baker was problematic in quarterbacking all this season, and there's some real rough reads. But the question is, for the future employer of Odell, how much do you want to bring into your locker room? I mean, it's a little bit like Antonio Brown. Not a lot of teams wanted Antonio Brown anywhere near their roster, but the Bucs did, and he paid off huge dividends. Could Odell be the same way? He's still relatively young right now. He's 29 years old. He just turned 29 this week. So we'll see if a contender decides that they want him when we see what the waivers look like this week. Finally, Kevin Dyson came up just 1.5 yards short of the Super Bowl winning touchdown back in 1999 between the Titans and the Rams. And he is a part of the Titans coverage on Titans radio, pregame and postgame. And I asked Kevin Dyson, what do you think Adrian Peterson can bring to the table now that Derrick Henry is out?
Adrian Peterson may not be the explosive player that he has been throughout his Hall of Fame career, but you don't forget how to run the football. You know, I think he can be effective now. He's not going to be the Derrick Henry in his prime type running back or even himself in his prime. But I feel like through the right kind of scheme, guys making their blocks, doing their assignments, the 2 or 3 guys that are going to have opportunities to catch the ball down the road here can be effective. I mean, this is the NFL, and there's a lot of good football players. You know, there's a few special ones like Derrick Henry or Adrian Peterson in his past, but there are a lot of good football players that just need opportunity, and then the right opportunity can be highly effective.
Like I said, the best part about Adrian Peterson for the Titans is that even though he's 36 years old, he has not played football this year. It's not like he was cut somewhere early in the season, training camp, etc. So if he's ever going to be fresh, it would be right now. But even though Adrian Peterson's a future Hall of Famer, he's nowhere close to Derrick Henry, and this means there's a lot of responsibility that shifts now to Ryan Tannehill and the passing offense. Tonight, big game, good one on Sunday Night Football, Titans and Rams from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Coming up straight ahead, we'll look at today's action from a Sharps perspective. We'll go out to Vegas. Amal Shah is our Vegas virtuoso this week. We'll talk to him about what Vegas sees in today's lines across the NFL. So that's straight ahead. D.A. Damon Amendolara here on Sunday Morning Football on CBS Sports Radio. Standing by with your headlines, here's Kevin Dexter.
Winners, whiners, wise guys. Every week we scour the NFL odds to see where you should plunk down your scratch.
Place your bet.
Sunday Morning Football, making wagering fun again.
You win. We appreciate you being with us this morning here on the show. Some breaking news. Adam Schefter is reporting that Tua Tagovailoa will not start today's game. He has a small fracture in the middle finger of his throwing hand that has not recovered. He will not start today's game against the Texans. Jacoby Brissett is now expected to be the Dolphins' starting quarterback today. That is from Adam Schefter. Another injury to Tua Tagovailoa that now brings in Jacoby Brissett. And how could you ever think that Tua will ever be healthy enough to be the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins as a franchise quarterback? He cannot stay on the football field. Now a fracture in the middle of his finger on his throwing hand, and he's out today's game against the Texans. Yikes. Okay, let's get to Amal Shah, our good friend, our Vegas virtuoso this morning. Amal, good morning.
Good morning, DA. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for joining us and kind of going through the late-breaking news for today's NFL action. Let's start with your Sunday nighter, because this is such a good matchup, Titans and Rams. But without Derrick Henry, what does the Titans defense, or Titans offense rather, look like? The Rams are favored by 7.5 points. How much does the removal of Derrick Henry affect how you look at the weekly lines of the Titans?
I think it's huge. I don't know in this game if it'll be as impactful because they're getting over a touchdown here. But when you look at the fact it's going to be Adrian Peterson and Jeremy Nichols that are basically replacing these guys, that's a precipitous drop-off when you look at what the 18-wheeler can do. And the other thing, DA, is to me, Derrick Henry in the lineup impacts how well Tannehill plays. I think it's going to have a profound impact on this offense. I think they're in trouble in this game, but I still think with the number being over a touchdown, they'll have a possibility of hanging around just a few too many points. But I think the Rams win this football game. Long term, I have some concerns about how impactful Tennessee is in the AFC.
Tell me what Vegas thought about the removal of Aaron Rodgers today at Arrowhead Stadium. Right now, the line is the Chiefs by 7. Had Rodgers been activated for this game, what would this line have been?
It would have been a pick'em. It was the initial opener of a pick'em. You would have probably seen Green Bay wind up as a 1-point favorite before kickoff, maybe even a little bit higher. There is not a bigger separation between a starting quarterback and a second-string quarterback than the Green Bay Packers. You're going to see a big drop-off, as you alluded to, in the number. I love the Packers here catching 7. I took them earlier in the week at 7.5. Look, Jordan Love's an unproven guy, but the reality of it is if you're ever going to get a start, this Kansas City team is the one you want to do it against. I mean, Daniel Sorensen, have you guys seen him at all this year facing forward? Every time we see him on TV, we see the back of his name because somebody's beating him for a touchdown.
I know, he's been on ice skates all season long, and the Packers travel to Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs and Jordan Love's start. So describe to me this. The Chargers are a better football team than the Eagles. They're 4-3. The Eagles are 3-5. Justin Herbert obviously has been fantastic despite last week losing to the Patriots, and yet this is finishing as a pick-em this week. Why are people not high on the Chargers going to Philadelphia?
You know, I think it's a simple fact of the way the defense has played for the Chargers. You look at over the last several games, they've really struggled in terms of what they've been able to do defensively. New England came in there on the road, get to W. We saw the Ravens absolutely just torch them. And the Browns, the reality is if Vizcaino doesn't miss that extra point, Browns probably go down and kick a game-winning field goal and win that football game, but they still gave up 40-plus points in that game. I think there's some concerns when you look at the defense, but I think if there's an opportunity for the Chargers to get back on track, this is the game against the team with Jalen Hurts, who still has some big question marks for me at quarterback.
Amal Shah joins us this morning, our Vegas virtuoso, looking at today's NFL action. Browns and Bengals, one of the early kicks from Cincinnati. Bengals are a home favorite, about 2 points right now. What do you think about the removal of Odell Beckham from this offense? Do you think it can help the Browns and Baker Mayfield, or naturally it hurts them because he's a big play threat?
You know, D, I have to say I think it benefits them. If you look at statistically the Browns and Baker Mayfield in particular statistics without OBJ in the lineup, it's proven that the Browns are better without him. Sometimes the talent doesn't necessarily make up for whatever the problems that exist in between, whether it's chemistry or cohesion. I think the Browns are going to be better served. Jarvis Landry is really the catalyst for this offense in terms of what he can do. So I think the Browns are going to have a much better chance. And the fact that this is behind them now, I thought this was the right decision by Sashi Brown and company to move forward without OBJ. And this way Stefanski's not forced to try and get the ball to Beckham. I think this team will be just fine going forward. This is a tough game, though, a division opponent on the road here in Cincinnati.
I had just mentioned before you came on that Tua Tagovailoa is not going to play today, injured finger in his throwing hand, and so Jacoby Brissett's going to start. How does that affect the Dolphins versus Texans line? Texans are in Miami today.
You know, for me, it wasn't as big of a deal with Brissett over Tua. A little bit of a drop-off because of Tua's mobility. Jacoby's not a guy that's going to move in and around the pocket, and until he's forced to throw the ball down the field late in the game like he did against the Raiders, he's not going to do that. But the one question mark that I thought was really answered was when Tyrod Taylor was expected to start for the Texans. It changed the dynamic of what the Texans can do offensively instead of having Davis Mills in there. I like Houston's chance to be able to win this football game, and I don't have a number in front of me, but I'm assuming it's dropping quickly in favor of Houston right now.
I would imagine so. Cardinals and 49ers. Kyler Murray has that strained calf, which he suffered in that classic game against the Packers a couple of Thursdays ago. And so going to San Francisco, the Niners are favored by 3.5 points here. So how does Kyler Murray's injury affect not only how this line looks, but also how you would view this matchup?
Well, you mentioned it's at 3.5. Now, it's a little bit too much for me to lay with San Francisco. At 3, 2.5, anything less, I would have taken it. I think San Francisco wins this ballgame. I think it's going to be a tight, hard-fought game. But with Murray's injury, I think it has an impact on what this team potentially can be. Remember, DeAndre Hopkins also dealing with a hamstring. So a lot of concerns in terms of the offensive health of the Arizona Cardinals in this game. And then don't forget George Kittle back in the lineup for San Francisco. That's going to have a huge impact for Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know, including Travis Kelce, if there's a single tight end that has a greater impact for their team than what George Kittle brings to the table for the San Francisco 49ers.
Amal Shah joins us, our Vegas virtuoso this morning. Bills and Jaguars from Jacksonville. This is a huge line. The Bills are more than 2 touchdown favorites on the road. The line right now is 14.5. Man, we know the Bills are great. We know the Jaguars stink. But what do you think about a number this big today?
Yeah, I tend to be a person who would generally take the points, but it's hard to back Jacksonville in this particular spot. A lot of concerns about how consistent this team can be in terms of moving the football. Buffalo is probably going to win this game. I say that because I have them in a survivor pool. I have the Bills this week, so I expect them to win this game. But I just think there's some better games out there. I don't want to lay 14.5 on the road, and I definitely don't want to take the Jaguars either.
Give me a number today that you circle this week and you really like.
It is Green Bay. I just think the fact that we've seen Daniel Jones and the Giants have success, and I thought the Giants put a pretty good blueprint together for what Green Bay could do defensively in terms of taking away some of Mahomes' weapons. I think as long as they can run the ball, and Aaron Jones is a guy that's been completely unsung this year for the Packers, I think they'll have an opportunity to move the ball effectively on the ground. If they can control the clock a little bit with a young quarterback, limit mistakes, and then not give up a big play, not only do they have a chance to cover this number, but I think they have a chance to win this game outright.
Check out Amal Shah's Twitter profile because you can follow along with his analysis of the NFL weekends at Amal Shah 1. And also you hear him on VSIN, VSIN.com, to the website you can go to for complete betting coverage. They're a radio network that does everything that looks inside the wagering around sports. That's VSIN and VSIN.com. On Twitter, that's VSIN Live on Twitter. Hey, Amal, always good to catch up, man. Thanks so much. Enjoy the games today.
Thanks so much for the time.
You got it. Amal Shah, our guest this morning here on the show. So, like I said, Tua Tagovailoa, I know he's a good guy. You know, Nick Saban raved about him from a leadership standpoint, from a fitting in standpoint, from a coachability standpoint. And Tua was a winner. At Alabama, he was a straight-up winner. There's no way you can deny it, and the Georgia Bulldogs know that all too well. They were in a national championship game where they had control of that game up until Tua was inserted by Nick Saban. Jalen Hurts couldn't do anything. Tua came in, immediately lit a spark for that Alabama offense. 2nd and 26 in overtime, launches a perfect pass to Devontae Smith. They end up walking off as the winner, national champs. Tua has that factor, at least did back in college. But in the NFL, it's been a real roller coaster. And it's been a combination of injuries, are you healthy, are you available, and then effectiveness. Can you move the football? Can you spread the football around? Can you take advantage of what you have around you? And this whole thing has become a debacle in Miami, a true debacle. I mean, number one, for a front office and Brian Flores to opt for Tua Tagovailoa over Justin Herbert is going to end up going down in history as one of the great quarterback draft blunders ever. I mean, it doesn't take much now in year number 2 to see that Tua will never be Justin Herbert. And it's just never going to happen. Number 2, you look at all of the draft picks that Flores, Greer, and that front office have accumulated over the last couple of seasons, and look at how ineffective, how unproductive so many of them are. And then you combine that with Tua's injuries and just how kind of nightmarish so many finishes to games have been this year, and you look at the assistant coaches that have been run off under Flores, and you realize that last year was the anomaly, not this year. That last year going 10-6 was not the real Miami Dolphins. Multiple times they had to yank Tua late in games to put Ryan Fitzpatrick back in to pull the iron out of the fire. And so a one-win Dolphins team today at 1-7 is going to once again have to start Jacoby Brissett because once again Tua Tagovailoa is not healthy, and once again this coaching staff should be massively under fire. And if they save their jobs at the end of this season, I would be shocked. I don't know how Stephen Ross has enough evidence this year that the Dolphins are headed in the right direction. Your schedule today, Browns and Bengals early from Cincinnati. That's on CBS, a 1 o'clock Eastern kick. These are all the 1 o'clock kicks. Broncos in Dallas against the Cowboys on Fox. Texans at the Dolphins in Miami. That's a Fox game as well. Also on Fox, Falcons in New Orleans against the Saints. The Raiders travel to New Jersey in the Meadowlands to take on the Giants. It's a 1 p.m. Eastern kick on CBS. Meantime, also on 1 o'clock, a couple of AFC East teams. The Patriots travel to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Sam Darnold will get the start today for the Panthers. The Bills are traveling to Jacksonville. Huge favorites there. Buffalo's a 14.5-point favorite in Jacksonville today. 1 p.m. Eastern kick on CBS. And on Fox on 1 p.m. Eastern, it's the Vikings in Baltimore taking on the Ravens. That's a rematch of a crazy game back in 2013, if you might remember, where it was a snowy day in Baltimore, and the Ravens and Vikings couldn't move the football offensively for so much of the day. But late in that game, it became a duel, and Joe Flacco, and then crazy defensive plays and special teams plays. It was a back-and-forth, crazy game. Matt Castle was the quarterback of the Vikings, and it was a flurry of points in the final minute and 16 that the Ravens finally survived after that Super Bowl run of the year before. Late games, Chargers-Eagles, Packers-Chiefs, Cardinals-Niners, and tonight, Titans and Rams. Thanks to Connor Green, executive producer, and Anthony Pierno on the Wheels of Steel. I'm D.A. Thanks for joining us on Sunday Morning Football today, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. on The D.A. Show.
Hello, I'm Jason Concepcion, former co-host of Binge Mode Ravenclaw with Gryffindor Rising, still repping the Night's Watch despite Season 8, and the host of Crooked Media's new podcast, X-Ray Vision. Every week, my guests and I will take you through the world of comic book movies, fantasy shows, and more. Join us as we deep dive into your favorite franchises, discuss fan theories, and the latest news. Listen now for free on Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Get Macy's lowest prices of the season on specials for cooler weather, like cute boots and booties starting at $27.99. And warm new coats for all, 50 to 60% off. And get cafe-style coffee at your fingertips with select Nespresso bundles for only $124.99, now at Macy's. Plus, get your Macy's order faster when you pick up curbside or in-store. Or try same-day delivery powered by DoorDash. Savings off sale and clearance prices, exclusions apply.
With Farmers, you could get savings just for becoming a customer. It's a little extra something. So to tell you about it, we're adding a little extra something to this ad. Precious baby giggles. When you switch to Farmers, you could save an average of $437 on your home insurance. And that's a whole lot of something, baby. Aw, get a quote at farmers.com.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Based on average nationwide annual savings survey data July 2020 to 21, underwritten by Farmers Trucker Fire Insurance Exchanges or affiliate. Products not available in every state.